Welcome back to the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. I'm your host, Tiffany Deku. Here we talk about all the food happenings around Acadiana. If you like food, tune in. You might learn something new. Welcome back, guys. We are doing a special on-location episode of the Lafayette Food Junkie radio show. We are out towards Karen Crow at Acadiana Food Hub, and Zach McMath, the president of Acadiana Food Hub, is joining us now. And we've had him on the show before, and we're going to talk a little bit about the progress that's been going on with the Food Hub in the past year since it got started. You guys had a fundraising event last night for the Food Hub. It was the first fundraising event. How did that event go about?
It actually went great. We had a small fundraising dinner, about 50 people. We had 5 courses from some of the top chefs in Lafayette. Ryan Trahan from Dark Roux, Colin Carmier from Pops, Chris Allen from Pamplona's, and actually Chef Milk from St. Joseph's Diner. That was interesting because what we wanted to do for this dinner was work towards food security in Acadiana, and having Chef Milk come in was important because all of these restaurants that we'd mentioned are using a local hydroponic lettuce that's grown here in Lafayette, and so does Chef Milk at St. Joseph's Diner, homeless shelter food, soup kitchen basically. So the important thing to realize here is that we're showing very transparently that Lafayette's fine dining and Lafayette's homeless can afford to eat the same food, the same price. That's the kind of food security we're looking for, and the kind of food equality that we want to see happen. We feel like growing it locally and keeping that price low can make this affordable and convenient for those kind of people. So the dinner went well. We had a live auction and a silent auction. We raised at least a few $1,000s, and that's actually going to go to help implement some software, and as well as our waiter application for home delivery of local produce from local farmers.
When you were talking to me about the event, you were saying that it was going to be hyper local. Even some of the seasonings that the chefs were wanting to use needed to be local. How complicated did that get?
Right. So it's not an easy thing to do, to source exclusively local. I had all the chefs. The challenge really for them was to source within 60 miles. So that means no olive oil. We use pecan oil, right? In one case, the chefs came and said, "Well, can we use a coriander?" And I said, "Can you find a local coriander? Otherwise, basically change the recipe." The point was to show that we could create an entire 5-course dinner with multiple portions to each of these. Actually, it ended up being 6. And do it exclusively locally. So we had Angus grass-fed beef tartare, muscadine caviar, just things that you wouldn't necessarily think to use, but when challenged to use those things, we can, and we were able to create an incredible dinner that was like we were shooting for, hyper-local and everything within 60 miles. I mean, butter, milk, everything.
So when you say food security, what are you meaning by that?
Well, really, we have an issue here in Lafayette in particular, but you're going to see this across all of Acadiana, that Lafayette has a 2-day food supply. That doesn't make me feel very secure. And a year after having the flooding happen, where we saw the grocery stores go empty and everybody losing the food in their freezers, that we aren't quite as secure as we would like to be. Our food system for the school system all comes from Baton Rouge. And when those trucks were underwater in Denham Springs, we couldn't have food delivered to our schools. These are issues that, until something happens, we don't really think about it or notice. But that's the part of security. We feel secure, but but not everyone is that secure, right? There's a huge issue with sourcing fresh in places like food deserts. They don't have access to grocery stores. People have to get on buses or walk miles just to go to the grocery store. That's an issue that we want to try and work on, is access and affordability. That will make us more secure in our ability to find fresh food.
And I know that you've explained it before. You're probably super sick of explaining it to the point where I was like, Zach, you should put these on postcards. And you do. You actually have the definitions of each of these things on postcards for everyone, that if anyone stops by at Acadiana Food Hub, they can pick up one of these, and it kind of goes into detail of what a food hub is, what a commissary kitchen is, and what a food incubator is. Explain a little bit to the audience, though, in case they're unfamiliar with what they are.
Sure, thanks. So what we really aimed to do here was create really an infrastructure to support a local food economy. And there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle that really just didn't have support. So the Acadiana Food Hub is our nonprofit that's here to support local farmers and our access to them. Sometimes this is trucking or storage. Sometimes this is just negotiating larger contracts with the school system or with prisons or hospitals, right? Larger buyers that smaller farmers maybe couldn't negotiate with, but if we can get everybody to work on the same team and create a community out of this, then we can really have a lot of potential. Inside of that food hub, we have a couple kitchens here that help us to support that infrastructure and pay rent. That's the Acadiana Commissary Kitchen for food trucks, caterers, and virtual restaurants delivered by Waiter app, so you can test out your restaurant concept before you invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in a 5-year lease on a restaurant that may not work. We also have the Acadiana Incubator Kitchen, which is a manufacturing kitchen registered with the FDA that allows you to make products to go into wholesale accounts and stores. So if you want to get your product onto a store shelf in a grocery store, you can't just make that stuff in your home. You've got to do that in a certified kitchen, and we provide that space rental by the hour, which has been very convenient for people that don't want to invest in the infrastructure and the equipment and aren't necessarily doing this every day. Come in a couple days a month and produce your products, and then we can help sell them online and e-commerce fulfillment, and help get them in the grocery stores and things like that. So that's a little bit of what we do here. Really, all of that again is just to support our access to local food. There's local food that's produced here, the people that are producing it, and the people that are cooking it. We kind of all wanted those things to work together in an environment that promoted local food in that way. So, yeah.
All right, we are going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to have Kerry Kennedy on with Basin Blend. He is one of the tenets of the Acadiana Food Hub, and we're going to talk to him a little bit more about his business. So come back to us. It's the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Welcome back to the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. I'm your host, Tiffany Daku, and we are doing a special edition of the Lafayette Food Junkie Radio Show. We are out at the Acadiana Food Hub. President Zach McMath of the Acadiana Food Hub is tonight's guest co-host. And joining us now is Kerry Kennedy. He owns Basin Blend, and it's one of the tenants at the Acadiana Food Hub. And we're going to talk to him a little bit now about his business. So if somebody's not familiar with Basin Blend, explain what it is.
So Basin Blend is a salt-free, rough-cut seasoning made from large grains, herbs, and spices. The larger pieces give you a stronger flavor and a better aroma as you're cooking with the food. So it enables you to reduce the amount of salt that you're cooking with and have a healthier dish without getting rid of that Cajun flavor that we love here in Louisiana. It was something kind of born out of necessity. About 2.5 years ago now, my dad had a pretty serious heart attack. And as he was recovering from that, we were playing around with a lot of different spices and seasonings to adhere to his new heart-healthy diet that he had to be on. And here in South Louisiana, we have a certain taste for food that is hard to replicate around the world, and it's hard to find seasonings, especially salt-free seasonings, that can satisfy the Cajun palate. So Basin Blend came about as a way to help my dad stay on his heart-healthy diet, really. It was just a way to get him to eat healthy and still enjoy the food. And I think we were a big success with that. It just kind of grew from word of mouth. People started asking about it, and we started manufacturing it commercially. And the Food Hub here has been what enabled us to do that. It's how we're able to manufacture it and get it to all the people who've been asking for it.
So before, where was this being produced at?
We started making it in my mom's kitchen.
Yeah.
We made it at home in small batches, a little 1-gallon mixer, and we would do 2 or 3 batches at a time and give it away to friends and family. And as it started growing, as it started getting bigger, we realized that, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. We got to get a facility, get a kitchen. Started pricing that out. That would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy my own kitchen, build it. We're not quite there yet. It is hyper local. This is just in Acadiana for right now. So we needed a stepping stone to get to that large scale manufacturing facility, and that's the Food Hub. That's our stepping stone. It's our ability to test out the market, to make the product commercially and let people try it without taking on thousands of dollars of debt to do that. And the Food Hub is why we're still here.
So how long have you been in the Food Hub?
We moved into the Food Hub about 3 months ago, I believe. Yeah, I think 3 months ago.
Because you guys had ran a Kickstarter campaign to kind of get it started.
Yeah, we did a Kickstarter to buy some equipment for the Food Hub that we'd be using, we'd have available for other tenants here. So we kind of needed to get ready on my end to move in here. There were a few loose ends. I think we moved in almost as soon as they opened the doors, really. So there was very little in here at the time. So we were kind of bootstrapping it from the very beginning.
And how have you guys progressed since you've been using the facilities?
Quite a bit. We have new stores. I'm all the way in New Iberia now. We're out in Jennings, growing every day. I've got my eyes on Baton Rouge and New Orleans next.
Funny enough, over the weekend, I had a friend that was out at the Youngsville Farmers Market, and she was kind of showing some of the things that she had purchased there, and one of them was the Basin Blend at there. So you guys are apparently at the Youngsville Farmers Market.
Every month, we're there at the Youngsville Farmers Market. We kind of bounce around at times between New Iberia, Youngsville, and Abbeville. I think we're going to next month. So yeah, we do farmers markets. It's a great way to actually talk to people and hear what they think about it, and it's just a way to kind of interact with customers and find out their thoughts and feelings, and it's a great way to kind of show off the product at the same time.
And you guys actually have come out with a new blend.
Brand new. We have our Cajun Blend. A lot of people were asking for something a little bit spicier. It's just, we're in Acadiana here. You need something spicy. So the Cajun Blend is our same salt-free recipe. It adds some extra crushed red pepper and some cayenne to it to give it that Cajun heat. So it's brand new, just went on stores. It's available around Acadiana now and on our website. So I'm trying it out.
So what are you guys hoping to progress and grow into? What is your ultimate goal to be?
Ultimately, I want to be in a store near anyone who wants to buy it. Anyone who wants to try it, anyone who wants to have a heart-healthy option that they enjoy using. So my goal right now is to grow throughout Louisiana, to get it on shelves in this area through New Orleans and Baton Rouge and beyond.
And right now, so we're talking about the Basin Blend, seasoning blend. Where can people get it now, again, before we go to break?
So here in Acadiana, you can get it at Nunu's. You can get it at Fresh Pickens in Lafayette, Daspit Market in New Iberia, and Local Market in Jennings.
All right, we are going to take another break, and when we come back, we have more with Zach McMath. So come back to us. It's the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Welcome back to the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. I'm your host, Tiffany Deku, and we are doing a recorded show from the Acadiana Food Hub, and joining us again is President of Acadiana Food Hub, Zach McMath. Maybe we should mention where the facility is located, and can people just drop by, or do they need to make an appointment, or things like that?
Right, so we're actually on North University, just north of the interstate, 1811 North University, same building as Elliott Electrical Supply. It's probably best to call and make an appointment. We have a small staff, and we need to make sure that we have time for you. But you can come in, and we do have information in the lobby that you can kind of educate yourself on what we do if we can't get a tour that day. But you can always go to our website at acadianafoodhub.com. We're on Facebook, and Instagram. For the incubator and commissary kitchens, it's not hard to get in touch with us or find us. We're always available. Yeah.
Okay, so say somebody comes in and they're like, I have an idea for this product. Take us through the process of what they would have to do to get set up with you guys.
Yeah, so we've basically put together a step-by-step guide on how to do that. Sometimes that's the biggest barrier to entry of a market is realizing what laws regard your type of product. One of those first questions is who do you want to buy your product? If you tell me that you're selling it directly to people, then you use the commissary kitchen. If you're wanting to put this on grocery store shelves, then you need to use the incubator kitchen. We'll start to look at whether we can legally make those products in this kitchen in the first place. For instance, meat is one of those things that we can't be making boudin, packaging that, and shipping that all over the country right now. And so that's one thing that wouldn't necessarily fall underneath that umbrella. But we have basically a step-by-step guide that goes through registering with the Secretary of State, creating your LLC, registering, contacting DHH in regard to what you're making and if you can do it, and then even things like liability insurance and ServSafe. So everyone that comes in has to be ServSafe certified, which is a basic food handling safety certification. Every manager of a restaurant has to have one. It's basically so you have somebody on staff that knows what temperature chicken should be at or how to wash their hands, right? ServSafe, insurance, and basically business paperwork is all you really need to be able to start to use the kitchens, as long as DHH and the health department says that's okay. But yeah, like I said, we have a very thorough checklist to get people through that process. It's always so much of a headache. And that will start them out, and then after that, once they're inspected by the health department here, they'll come in, and we actually are offering the first shift free, so you can kind of work through the issues and figure out what it is you need. But you'll actually be able to come in and schedule your time online through a software called the Food Corridor, and you'll schedule your time, and you'll have access to the kitchens at that time. All of your payments and everything are done online on that platform. And that's kind of the gist, depending on what you're doing. But basically, we'll sit down and have a nice long conversation about what you're doing, what your intentions and goals are. If you need some people may need marketing. So as people go to our website, they can fill out a form that will address things like marketing or business development, product and recipe and ingredient, production.
Right.
And so they inevitably come in with questions like, hey, I need somebody to help with marketing, right? I've got this brand, but I need somebody to help push it. I need to create a Facebook or a website, and I don't do that, right? So we are constantly trying to help people find the right people to help them work through those things. So there may be an accountant to make sure you're paying your taxes right for the first time since you've gone legit, right? The opportunity is for us to sort of incubate food businesses, and so that initial meeting will be kind of figure out what it is that you need, what's the best thing for your company's development, and we'd see all kinds of different types of products from Kerry's blend to old soul pickles and things like that. In the other kitchen, we have 4 food trucks that are now in business in Lafayette because, I don't know if you know this, but every food truck has to have a commissary space to operate out of. You're not supposed to be cooking this food in your house, dumping your gray water into a storm drain and filling up with your hose from your backyard. There's a lot of just inherent risk for food safety and the environment, right? Dumping that stuff. And that's why you need a commissary, which is usually a restaurant or a kitchen or something like that. If you've got a buddy that will allow you to come in there and his insurance policy says it's okay. But even that, then you're taking up time in somebody's kitchen that they're using. So we wanted to create a space that really catered to food trucks in the way they use time in a kitchen, and their needs. So the ability to be able to dump their gray water, fill up with fresh water, park their truck, store their refrigerated items in a locked cooler. Things that were inherent safety issues for food. We wanted a solution because it's really been a barrier for people getting into the food truck business. Where do I park my truck? When you open up your paperwork from the health department, it says, where's your commissary and where do you dump your water? And if you don't have an answer for that, you don't pass. And so we wanted an answer for that. So now there's like I said, there are at least four new food trucks in Lafayette that didn't exist or couldn't exist because they didn't have a commissary. Actually, one of those is Wing Fingers. Wing Fingers was our first food truck. Those guys are killing it right now. It's kind of a funny story, but after a month and a half, they kind of came to me and, with their kind of heads hung, and they were like, "Hey, man, we got a really good deal on another place." They actually were able to move into Ricochet's, which is a pool hall right over on Ambassador. They had a built-in clientele. They could operate their food truck, and they could have waiter deliver. And they told me what the price was, and they could do it for $1,000. And I went, "Guys, get out of my kitchen. That's a great deal. Congratulations. That's the whole point." Right? We actually printed out a diploma and we gave them a diploma. We were super proud because that was the point. They would have had a very difficult time, getting loans without any sales, and they really were. They had a truck that was ready to go and couldn't find a place to park it. And so in less than, I think, 3 months now, they've moved out of Ricochet's and they're taking over they're revamping the old Linebackers, which was the old Gallagher's on University across from the dorms and across from UL. So it kind of showed that just simply having a place to launch from in a very short amount of time could create something that was a full-fledged business that was employing people and was a storefront. Didn't have to stagnate. And now some people will come and just continue to run their trucks. Some people will run virtual restaurants and probably not really want to leave. That's okay, right? But what we wanted was at least to create a platform to be able to allow people to grow these brands like Wing Fingers and like Kerry. There's, like I said, we don't do meat. So there's a beef jerky company out of Erath. And they actually had to go out of Louisiana to produce their jerky. They send it all back here and they self-distribute it, but they had to have it produced somewhere else. The important part is that they had to produce so much as a minimum order that it was a huge financial investment. Okay? And that's the kind of thing Kerry's talking about, that unless you have a huge financial investment to produce 10,000 jars with a co-packer, and that's your first run, that's a big risk, because what if it doesn't taste good? It's also a big risk because now you're sitting on a whole bunch of product. What Kerry's going to be able to do is get his product into stores, generate sales, and show those sales, and then be able to leverage those and that into investment and loans and things like that that will allow him to grow. But you have to have an incubation point for that, and we wanted our entire food community in Acadiana, that is an incredible food community and that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world like this. We wanted all of them to have a place to be able to grow. Farmers to be able to have more access, manufacturers in the incubator, and like I said, food trucks and caterers and such, and the commissary.
So you guys have been open a year now. Longer than a year? Not quite a year.
Well, construction finished 2 months ago.
Really?
Well, 3 months ago. 3 months ago now, yeah. Because, like I said, Kerry was the first one to come in.
Wow.
So where we are, these were actually offices. So now they're kitchens. They weren't kitchens before. And so this is about 6 to 8 months of build-out that we had to do. So you walk in there, and there's walk-in coolers and freezers in there now. So yeah, that build out. So my project and what we wanted to do was hit the ground running. So we've been talking about this and building this for a year, but not until this construction was done and people were starting to move in and the health departments had come and done their inspections, where we finally opened as of about 3 months now.
3 months.
Yeah.
Can you say what some of the other food trucks are?
Yeah, off the top of my head, there's Thelma's, there's A&A Soulful Creations, Wing Fingers, like I said. There's also a Snowball Stand in Youngsville that I can't put my finger on. And actually, I think there's a new group of guys. It's called Kitchen on Clinton.
Yes.
KOK, and they're working on finishing their inspections.
We'll be looking for those.
Yeah, because they're great.
And you guys just got your nonprofit status as well. So what is that going to mean for the Food Hub?
That was. That's something we've been working on for a long time. It actually is. We got the paperwork in a couple weeks ago. It's retroactive to September of 2016, which is great, because all of this work that we've done over this last year for free, at least is recognized, because we really have been doing this for free, right? The nonprofit status is great. It allows people to help and help more effectively. Donations are awesome. It also allows us to be opened up for more grants that cater to nonprofits. It's difficult to do something that's a social benefit at a low margin, and be successful. And that's a lot of the reason that we wanted to allow people to be able to help, because inevitably we're going to need help to support people that really need that support. Those people that are in food deserts that need food access, this is a great way to be able to support them. And we wanted to make that easy for people. So the nonprofit status was huge. And it helps everybody to know that we're doing what we should be doing, that all these checks and balances are there, that we have a board and we have some policies that they can be confident in, that we're doing the right thing and that we're working in everyone's interest for the things that we just talked about.
So one of the things, if you go to the Waiter app website, you can see Acadiana Food Hub is there, and it says coming soon. What is the progress doing with that, and what exactly are you guys going to be doing with Waiter?
Yeah, so we actually had to create a grocery store, and that's our Waiter application. So we're basically going to fill this space, this virtual grocery store, with local items. From farmers, which is a great opportunity and market for them, an everyday, access to a market. That will be available on Waiter for home delivery, so you'll be able to go in and see what the inventory is from local farmers and place an order for home delivery. We talked about food deserts. You may laugh, but these people will be able to order fresh food cheap into places that don't have food access. There's a lot of goals to create retail, grocery stores and things in areas like this that need retail. But there's a huge, obviously, investment that goes into building a store and stocking it with food. We thought this was a really interesting and efficient way to get that food over to them. So we're looking at probably a couple weeks. As I said, we had to create a grocery store. Health department has to come over and look at our grocery store, and then they'll sign off, and we'll open up. So we're looking at, like I said, maybe 2-3. If it's a month, I'll be real sad. But like I said, the ball is in their court now to come and do those inspections. But yeah, people will be able to source local produce every day of the week.
All right, we are going to take another break, and when we come back, we have more with Zach McMath. So come back to us. It's the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Welcome back to the Lafayette Food Junkie Show on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. I'm your host, Tiffany Deku, and we've been talking to a president of Acadiana Food Hub, Zach McMath. I want to talk a little bit more about food deserts really quickly. I used to always hear this term and not really get it and not really understand it. As someone who has a vehicle and has easy access to a grocery store, it was hard for me to really process at first. But then if you have to sit there and think about it, if you're in a metropolitan area and you don't necessarily have access to a vehicle, maybe you can't afford a vehicle, it could be more difficult for you to get to a supermarket to get produce and food items. Or if you live in a very rural area and you also don't have access to a vehicle, even harder for you to get to a grocery store to get food items. So that's what we're talking about when we say food desert, correct?
Right. There's some sort of algorithms that they put as they look at communities. They've actually done this for Lafayette and identified, I think like a dozen or so areas that it takes. And when we talk about, so the word is food desert, right? Other people use the word food insecure areas. So as we talk about food security, that's what we're talking about. Right. We're talking about areas and people that don't have access to fresh food. And like you said, maybe they can't afford a car. Well, if they can't afford a car, it's not likely they can also afford a $5 head of lettuce from Whole Foods, right?
Right.
So the goal is to get that stuff locally and more affordable. But as far as food deserts, you're talking about places that are miles. I mean, in some cases, even a mile and a half is a long way. Trust me, your ice cream is going to be melted in August if you're walking home, or if you're having to take 2 connecting buses to go to a grocery store or get in a taxi. Right, this is all money that we just spent to just get access to food, and just it's sort of something that doesn't necessarily have to be that way, and we really can create something that kind of equalizes our food access and our healthy food access, and fresh food access. But yeah, that's a lot of what this project is to I won't go as far as to say solve, because there's a lot of solutions for food deserts. Kerry and I were actually talking earlier about backyard gardens and people growing them themselves. It's something we're going to be working on here. That education of what is fresh food, right? That's something we really want to work on, right? Because sometimes the worst food is the most convenient, and we want to change that. If we can flip that, it'd be great. It at least gives people the option to choose. When they go into a convenience store and there's a frozen burrito and a bag of chips and a soda, okay, it would be neat if there was also a salad and water or something, right? That was cheaper or the same price. Then at least gives them the opportunity to choose. Right now, we don't really have that choice.
And I know last time I went to buy a salad, it was almost double the cost of buying a burrito. Uh-huh. Eating healthy is ridiculously expensive at times, and I don't think it needs to be.
Right, I totally agree. I mean, there's some real issues, but that's a lot of what we look to tackle, and we're working on it. I mean, one of those issues was simply an infrastructure to support and have access. We built that now. Now what's the issue, right? The issue now, and as we may have talked about earlier, the issue now is, do we grow enough, right? So here we built this warehouse for cold storage and everything else, and we look out and see the average age of farmers in the United States is 59 years old, and 3% of our population knows how to grow food. We don't start growing food soon, we're not going to grow food anymore. And that's just how it looks. And even with the new laws that are being passed and the Food Safety Modernization Act of 2015, which goes into effect in 2018, it's going to put farmers out of business. I mean, it's just going to put undue regulatory strain on them. Sometimes a lot of paperwork. Well, that doesn't seem very difficult unless you're an illiterate farmer in rural Louisiana, right? Then when they tell you need paperwork for a bird that flies over your field and goes to the bathroom, you start to close down your farm. When they tell you that you need a refrigerator on your farm for your sweet potatoes, well, you can't afford a $15,000 refrigerator, you have to shut down your farm, right? And so we're reaching out to a lot of farmers, and most of them are saying, I've been growing turnips for 20 years, I'm going to keep growing turnips, and if they're going to tell me I can't, then I'm just going to stop. I'm retiring anyway. This is my age. And so we really want to create a space that lets millennials get into farming with some real solutions. It's not maybe a 40, go buy 40 acres in a combine. How about a hydroponic greenhouse that kind of plugs and plays, and we can just deliver this, and it's a temporary structure. That's a solution that even me would want me to get into farming if I could control my farm from my iPhone, right? And that's actually a reality, and something we've developed here in Lafayette is a plug and play hydroponic farm that unpacks from a box, and in 6 weeks you're growing 1,200 heads of lettuce. So we don't grow a lot here. We're going to start growing a lot. Okay, we're giving more market to these farms. They're already looking to expand and take over new land and grow more stuff to fulfill the new market. I've got farmers that have 100 acres and only plant 10 acres because they only sell at Saturday morning farmers market. And if it rains, they don't sell anything. At least now, if it rains, they can drop off here, and we can sell that for them the rest of the week, right? On waiter. In a muff.
So I was telling you a little bit about this before the show, and I've talked about it before on the radio show, how I did a CSA last year. It was probably the best thing that I could have ever done, because it taught me a lot about what it means when it's farm to table, what's in season, and part of my frustration with doing the CSA, and that what kind of opened my eyes, is that it was the winter season, which is not the best season to be able to get produce, especially in Southwest Louisiana, because it was a lot of sweet potatoes and collard greens. So my question to you was then about food diversity, I guess, with what produce these farmers would be growing, and is that possible? Because I'm sure that most consumers out there, if we're just trying to eat local and make local what's cheaper, they're not going to want to eat collard greens and sweet potatoes every week, every day. They're going to reach for the bag of potato chips or, the hamburger instead. So what do you know about diversity, I guess, with the farmers and the produce that they're growing, and is that even possible in Southwest Louisiana?
So there are things we simply can't grow here. I mean, for thousands of years, we've always transported spices, right? It's always been part of trade. But there are a lot of things that we can, and we just necessarily maybe don't. As you were describing the lack of diversity, I started pulling out the menu from the dinner last night, and I wouldn't call this menu lack of diversity. And there's lamb, there's alligator, there's beef and pork. There's edible flowers, muscadines, pecans, rust and peaches, local sea salt, quail eggs, peppers, farm-raised eggs, and this is just a very basic menu. The actual stuff on the plates. No, these were. But look, we had tomatoes and lettuce too, and it's August, right? But I think to your point is, and I should clarify, what you're talking about is the CSA.
Right.
And CSA is Community Supported Agriculture. Okay, and what that means is that you buy basically a subscription, and then every week you get whatever the farmer had, right? So choose your favorite farm, right? But I'll also mention that you were with Inglewood, right? Inglewood dropped off peppers and purple bell peppers, shishito peppers, black turnips, striped beets, beautiful food. And so that's actually one of the largest and most diverse. But there's sometimes a dissatisfaction in what you may not like. And if you don't eat collard greens and you get a whole bunch of collard greens, well, you didn't really have a choice. There are some solutions to this. Prudhoe City Farms does basically a pick what you want at the market. You can go up to a preferred CSA table if you're a member and choose, well, if they only had 10 pounds of tomatoes, you get the tomatoes if you're a CSA member. I wouldn't say there's a lack of diversity. I think there's a lack of knowledge on what we grow and what we choose. That's why it was so important that I had these chefs use only local items to show that we could actually do it. You can create a whole meal. You don't have to have olive oil. You can get local butter. We can actually achieve that. So the answer to your question is yes, but it takes a motivation. It takes a demand. It takes food transparency. What you might notice is that we don't really know where our food comes from. What we do know is it usually comes from thousands and thousands of miles away. What we wanted to really show, and a lot of our big mission here, is to show that food transparency so that you as the consumer can know who grew your food and how, and be comfortable and feel safe in that. As we see a much heavier movement in organics, and then we lose sort of sight of what organic actually means, and that gets muddied. Inevitably, people just want to know where their food came from, right? Then they can, and they want to trust their farmer. That's really the only way you're going to have true transparency. And so that was something that we want to propel and be able to allow for branding from this farm. So even when you go onto the Waiter app to buy from this farm, it's not going to say beets, it's going to say Inglewood beets, right? We want people to know where their food comes from. We don't grow enough food. That's why food security is so important. No, we don't have enough. And oddly, we have a huge agricultural industry. It's just sugar canes and soybeans, and there is some beef. But beef, you end up having thousands of cows that are shipped in from across the country, and then they're finished on some grass here, but you don't know what they were eating back at those feedlots, right? We actually for the dinner last night, we used a local beef from Buff de Baque, and he only slaughters what's born on his property in Youngsville. It's been a family property for like 3 or 4 generations, and that was important. So we wanted to know exactly what that thing was being fed, because we were eating raw beef with a raw quail on top. Knowing that it was kept and stored and everything properly was hugely important when you're serving raw beef. And so there's a difference in that compared to what some larger producers will do. And so we wanted to create, like I said, an environment to grow those farms and give them that market, so that they can produce more. And the fact is, we don't eat local and we don't buy local because we don't grow local. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's just an inherent problem. It's only going to get worse as our average age of farmers gets older. So we have to push, and we have to create that initiative to to get more people into farming in a less riskier way, in a more profitable way. That's why we're here. Yeah.
The other issue is this crazy weather that we've been having with the rain and the flooding, and I mean that's going to hurt crops as well. So are y'all thinking about solutions to maybe help that with the farmers, or?
So there's disaster mitigation solutions, right? In some cases, in the flooding that happened last year, numerous farmers we work with lost 80% of their farms. That's real scary, but it's also real inconvenient for them, because then they got to turn around and plant some more. They need help seeding and planting. There are some solutions for that with some hydroponic farms that we have here that can help with that. So in some cases we were starting seeds for farms and growing little mature plants and then giving them to the farms, right? So that they had better seed germination. Because usually when they put a seed in the ground, 50% of those seeds are eaten by birds or slugs or things like that. So giving somebody basically a greenhouse to propagate, it's really, really helpful to small farmers. There are like, we live in South Louisiana, and not everything grows, and we have crazy weather. That's why there are some solutions that we've come up with to, like those greenhouses, that we can put all across the area. I'd love to see one of these at every school, right, and have schools growing their own lettuce. They wouldn't have to buy it. That sort of just, that, and that they're growing it there, they're teaching the kids about food, and they're actually going to consume it, right? They get to go home and tell mom that they learned what an eggplant was, and then they had it for lunch, and they pointed out at a grocery store. It's going to be harder for us to get, obviously, people that are older and ingrained in their diets to change or to pay attention to this. But school kids just want to learn and want to have the understanding, and they like new things. They just need to be taught what they are. So, introducing sort of farming-related things to curriculums. So, talking about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington's compost tea competition to see who can grow the fastest tomatoes with their compost tea, and Thomas Jefferson's compost tea recipe is in the Library of Congress. Right? Little things like that make you go, well, I think to some degree we've always, not always, but maybe for a large portion, stigmatized a farmer. People didn't want to be out in the fields. And so it's not always easy to get people to go and do that. But the more we can kind of make this cool, the more people we can get to grow food. And so starting with kids and helping them to understand where their food comes from, that strawberries don't come from a plastic container in the grocery store. They come from Ponchatoula, right? Hopefully they're Louisiana strawberries. But yeah, that's a big part of what we do at the Food Hub, is that education on what that means, why this is important, and what the solutions are. Because a lot of times people like to come up with what the problems are. We know what these problems are. These problems are very obvious. But a lot of these conversations end with what the problem is, and I didn't think that was the right place to end. I wanted some solutions to these barriers that are being created, and these problems that we're facing. So this and what we're talking about here is, well, at least my solution. I would love to know what everybody else's is, and let's all do it. I mean, the more people that are in this and that have a passion for this, I think the better off and more resilient and more secure we'll all be with our food system.
All right, that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us next week, Sunday at 6 p.m. This is Tiffany Deku on News Talk 96.5 KPEL, and this is the Lafayette Food Junkie Show. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy eating, Acadiana.